Well, listen, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me. It is a pleasure to do this, and I kind of just want to get started with a bit of a round of introductions, really, about who you are, but specifically your role in relation to Takedown Festival. And, if you don't mind, one fact about yourself.
Oh, who wants to go first?
Mm.
Okay, so my name's Kai Harris. I am half of the Takedown team and Divergent Promotions team with my wife Sarah. I've been promoting since the late 90s. And my role at Takedown is primarily promoter, but also jack of all trades with marketing, production, you name it. I'm generally involved somewhere along the line, but mainly booking the bands. Fact about me, I suppose I kind of got to this role via local artists singing in various new metal and prog metal bands over the last 20 years or so.
Cool. And then I am Sarah Harris. I'm Kai's wife, and we're a husband and wife team. My role with the festival is basically anything and everything. So we're literally a one-stop shop. We are partnered with Portsmouth Guildhall, who look after the venue side of things, so the day-to-day things like security, food and beverage, that good stuff. And then everything else falls under our remit. So predominantly responsible for all of the social media postings, but then any other admin and stuff that comes in. And with our other businesses, I am co-director and again involved in just about everything. So if there's a hat to be worn, both of us wear it at some point or both at the same time, which is quite interesting.
Mainly stopping me from doing something daft.
And I'm not sure about an interesting fact really, apart other than I climbed Snowdon on Sunday and I'm still trying to recover from it.
Incredible. That's simply incredible. How do you, I mean, how do you find, what do you do to relax? How do you find time to relax with all that going on?
At the moment, we don't
Yeah,
basically.
what's,
Try and
what is this relax?
yeah, try and shoot stuff in around work. But yeah, it's very hectic. Ask us again after Christmas and maybe after the festival if we've had a bit of a break.
Yes, but then my understanding is you're just planning for the next one after that. But of course, for those who don't know, we are talking about Takedown Festival here, the South Coast leading alternative metal and rock festival with the 2025 edition taking place at Portsmouth Guildhall on Friday the 4th and Saturday the 5th of April 2025. Now, obviously, we're going to get into the lineup in a bit, but let me assure everyone before we do that, it is a bloody great lineup. But before we talk bands and so on, if you can, sum up in a few words why I or someone else should buy a ticket right this very minute.
Oh well, the really obvious answer is that they're currently on early bird pricing at the moment. So for £15, you can get a ticket to see a whole bunch of bands. And even if you only like one or you've heard of one band, I would encourage you to still buy a ticket and come along because the event in itself isn't just about the bands, it's about the community and the scene. And it's just a great day out, really.
Yeah, I would say just to clarify, it's £15 for the Friday lineup, £20 for the Saturday, or is it 25 for both at the moment?
I can't remember off the top of my head.
I believe it is, yes. So yeah, all the tickets are extremely cheap, and if you were to check any of the tours for any of the bigger bands running currently, you will find that a festival ticket is probably cheaper than a ticket to see them on their own. So yeah, now's definitely a good time to jump in.
It is absurdly cheap. I also noticed that there's a VIP kind of upgrade going for like a £10, which kind of gives you some perks as well.
Yeah, it gets you your own bar and a nice sit. So if you are of a slightly more older demographic like Kai and I are, we love a good sit at a show. So we always try and make sure that we cater for that now.
It is amazing value, as you said. The amount of bands, let alone the quality on the range of bands on the bill, makes that price even no doubt after the early bird passes, that it'll be more than worth it. And I think it's really kind of interesting. People are very excited about this because, of course, 2025 marks your return. Of after having to cancel the 2024 edition due to, I believe it was predominantly renovations in the venue, right?
Yeah, so they had a project that was in their basement area to rebuild it and make it into a community space along with a recording studio and all sorts of great facilities. But unfortunately, that overran, and the subsequent stuff required to facilitate that build internally was outside, and it meant that we were going to have to lose our outside stage, which we felt compromised the event to the point where we wanted to just, go, no what? It's better if we postpone this and come back all guns blazing the following year.
It must feel quite cathartic to be building towards this new next edition.
Yes, yeah, it is. It's also bittersweet because obviously a huge amount of work goes into creating a festival and booking it, and then I don't think the general public know just how much goes into it and how much of it is you basically put your heart and soul into it, especially when you're a husband and wife team. There's literally no off button, and then to have to make that agonizing decision. I mean, we tried different configs and it just wasn't going to work for us. So we said, let's just make sure that it's going to be okay for everybody and we'll come back next year. And it was just absolutely soul destroying. Next year, we're sort of cautiously optimistic. We obviously had a lot of financial commitments from this year's edition that have rolled into next year. So it's really important that we recover financially to ensure that we've got longevity for the event.
Of course. Does it feel like a particular success story for you to actually be back and putting the 2025 edition on? Because obviously, you know yourselves, to stay in the industry, the work needed, as you've talked about there, the costs involved, you are still standing right now and en route to putting on one of the most exciting festivals of next year.
Yeah, I think it would have been, I guess, easier to just knock it on the head after a setback like that. But I don't think that was it was ever in question that we were going to try and come back in some form. Yeah, it's not been without its challenges. Obviously, with a number of artists have been rescheduled from the previous lineup. We've got financial restrictions because of the costs, unfortunately, incurred for marketing an event for a year that didn't happen, along with various other financial implications of that work. So
Mm.
yeah, it's been challenging, but it's been good to get it out there. It's been pretty well received.
Yeah.
Obviously, it is pared down slightly compared to previous years, but with the background of how this event has come about, I think people they understand in the main. But I still think we've managed to pull together a really exciting event.
Yeah, I think what the general public aren't necessarily aware of, and we sort of alluded to it in our press release when we announced the festival, was that since we postponed our event, another 60 festivals in the UK, independent festivals, have been lost, cancelled, or postponed. So the market and the landscape economically has changed significantly. So for us to be able to come back, albeit in a slightly pared down version than what we would have done historically, is still a great news story for us.
I 100% agree. I actually don't. You did explain it. You did put that out there, and it's great that you had that connection enough that you wanted to tell people and show them this and make them aware of what's been going on. But I feel like everyone actually is becoming more aware these days of like the struggle, not just for bands touring, but also smaller festivals and just surviving financially. Do you feel like your support base is thick and strong enough to kind of back you up, even if it was not necessarily from a financial point of view, just from a supportive social media side of things?
That's a tricky question, really. I think it
Mm.
would have been nice to get a couple of years more of the event in before we had something happen like this. 'Cause I think the problem was that when we came back in 2023, we had such a great success, which was due in no small part to obviously Sleep Token just taking off stratospherically after we booked them. It set the bar really high. So, what that wasn't the first time we'd done the festival. It's been around in various incarnations in years prior to that. But I think, yeah, it set the bar so high that a lot of people just expected that every single time. And then obviously to have to come back with a slightly pared down event with only that event as a frame of reference, There have been a few unkind words spoken around that, but I think by and large we do have the support of everyone that counts.
Yeah, the metal community is always supportive, in one way or another. You get the initial "what, no Metallica" type comments when you announce your lineup, and you're never going to please everybody. I think that's been the biggest lesson that both Kai and I have learned, is that you can't please everyone with your lineup. But the support that we're getting, and continuing support, is always very positive. So there's a great scene on the South Coast. It just needs to be nurtured and looked after.
It is a fantastic lineup. I second that completely. And I'm gonna just pull out a few, not the full thing because there's quite a few, but just basically bands like Kris Barras Band, Ferocious Dog, Scarlet Rebels, URNE, Elvana, Acres, Kid Bookie, Pint Glass, Seething Akira, Blanket, Tribe of Ghosts, to name but a few, varied as hell. So give me some insight into the booking mantra of Takedown and what your approach for 2025 was like.
Oh, it was very different to prior years, for sure, wasn't
Yeah,
it?
absolutely. I think based on the takedown of old, we'd always the main bulk of it is championing new music and trying to push bands that are coming through. So if we go back to the kind of about 2012 through 2014, we're looking at bands at the time like Skindred, Mallory Knox, Don Broco, a lot of names that went on to become bigger things, shortly after they appeared at the festival. And we got a bit of a reputation for doing that, and that was something we wanted to kind of maintain. However, after the success of 2023, where we feel like we definitely continued that trend on, we then decided to go for 2 days. And there was quite a lot of thought into what do we do in that second day, because we don't want to do 2 days of the same. And I decided it was probably time to pay a bit more homage to the older bands and the older styles. So we were harking back not only to bands that had perhaps played Takedown a decade before and trying to bring some of those back, but also bringing in bands that we grew up with, bands with a more sort of hard rock style, and then a nod towards the kind of new wave of British hard rock as well, which I felt was a nice positioning against that more kind of straight up alternative and kind of newer metal program that we've done before. I think there are a lot of people that like both, but there are probably also enough people that like one or the other to make that successful. So that was kind of the plan. And what we've ended up in 2025 is really kind of a sort of condensed down version of that, with the harder rock end on the Friday, and then the sort of more take down the original vibes on the Saturday.
Do you think you talk there and describe that almost like you have a recognizable identity, but it seems like you are willing and always game for basically booking anyone if it's a possibility. Is that the case?
Not necessarily. We are very conscious about making sure that we've covered as many genres as we possibly can,
Mhm.
and that we are not in the situation where we get accused of being gender biased in any way. Obviously, we're
Oh,
50% female owned and operated, so I am very much championing female fronted bands, non-binary bands, transgender bands. We want it to be completely inclusive for everybody and a safe space for everyone. So that a lot of that goes into the booking processes. It's not just about anyone can play, it's about where do they fit with our vision. Each edition looks slightly different to the previous one, and then it's making sure that we can create and tailor those spaces and those stages effectively in a way that is appealing to everyone.
Yeah, I think ultimately as well, we'd like it to transcend bands. Obviously, we're still going to be looking at trying to catch bands that are going to be big, or bands that everyone wants to see. But at the same time, within a couple of years, I'd like people just to go to Takedown because it's Takedown, and they have that level of trust in us to put on a great day. And it's not just about specific bands. It's a celebration. It's a party as well, which is hence a headliner like Elvana, because after having your face peeled off all day, why not just spend the last hour having great fun? That's kind of the principle.
I am a massive fan of festival experiences being more than just about the music and the bands. The community spirit and the community vibe is so damn important. It's fantastic to hear that that's such an important part of what you are doing or trying to do and aiming to do with Takedown as you move forward. Obviously, though, it's easier said than done. It comes with its own challenges. What are some of the challenges you face with trying to foster that positive mindset around creating a community event?
I don't think there's too many challenges really. I mean, we kill everybody by kindness. Our official motto is "Don't be a dick." So we try to get that ethos into everything that we do. So I don't really think that we've had any negative sort of challenges.
No, I think even the previous incarnations of Takedown, there's always been something about the vibe. I mean, we've always had a reputation for being a well-organized event, so the bands will be pretty happy and well looked after, and that's always been important to us. And I think that's just reflected in the day in general. The bands don't tend to play and leave; they'll play and then hang out with other bands they know, watch a few new bands. So you end up with the musicians all mingling in with the punters, and it's always been a great vibe. We were really pleased when we managed to recreate that in 2023 after an 8-year gap as well, because we weren't quite sure if we were going to be able to get that same vibe on a new site, but whatever we do in advance, it seems to be that we still manage to get that every time. So I'm not sure what the special sauce is, but we manage it.
Yeah.
How about general attendees, people who come and offer you, I don't know, call it feedback, advice, suggestions? How do you take that on board? Do you take most of it?
Yeah, we do. So I'm responsible for the social media pages. I constantly am looking at all the comments and taking on board. And we obviously, where we live together, husband and wife team, we're discussing it constantly. And if there's something that needs addressing, we will address it immediately. But with our 2023 edition, we did an exit survey to our customers. All of that information was collated, and then we took that feedback on board. But there wasn't anything that was glaringly like, oh my God, you've done this wrong, you need to make sure you do it. It's always generally the comments that we get are around the lineup. And that comes back to that can't please everybody piece, unfortunately. So, we listen. If there is a band that is consistently being picked out in the comments, then we will definitely investigate them. Even if they're not being consistently picked out, actually, I have to say that I will 9 times out of 10 go and then stalk their socials and see what they're all about, because we're always looking for new talent. But yeah, we try and get it covered on as many bases as possible, and we do listen and do respond where appropriate.
I think in terms of more general feedback, I think it was pretty glowing, really. I think there were a couple of things regards to maybe the toilets were a bit crowded and there could be more spaces to sit and eat. And I think, part of the building work was putting in completely new toilet blocks, so that's been addressed. And the spaces to sit and eat, we're going to have a whole outside space dedicated to that. So I think we've probably addressed what little negative there was, really.
I remember hearing about the 2023 edition all the way up here in London, and it just being seemingly a phenomenal event that I don't remember hearing anything negative. Never read it, didn't read a single bad review. Just a great event with great bands playing.
Well, I think Sleep Token were almost 45 minutes late on because of some issue with their patching their lighting rigging. And even that, there weren't really any niggles. There was so much anticipation on the day, and everyone had such a great day to that point. It was still vibing in the room after making everyone wait 40 minutes. So.
Well, I mean, that leads me on to the fact that we've got multiple stages operating at the same time. So again, the feedback we get is, oh no, my bands are going to clash. So we try to stagger it as much as possible. But when there is a situation like Sleep Token having a problem with their lighting, which, was insignificant in the grand scheme of things on the day, there are other rooms where you can go off to and then come back if if you need a break or if you want to do something else. It's not just you're stuck in a big gig in a big room. It's a multi-room venue with lots of different things offered in lots of different spaces.
Which triggers some of our more amusing complaints, to be honest. I mean, we do try and schedule as much as possible to avoid direct clashes, but when people
Yeah.
are, oh, I'm not going to be able to see all those bands. It's like, well, I'm not God. I can't allow you to be in multiple places at once, I'm afraid. It's just you any festival is going to be exactly the same. Bands play at the same time as other bands.
Yeah, it's a complaint I never fully will understand. But I always kind of presume if you've got a complaint, you are not familiar with the likes of the download and so on, where it's impossible, like it's simply impossible to be in all these places.
Yeah, exactly. And we've got the advantage that, we're a compact site. So it's not like you've got to run for 15 minutes from one field to
Yeah,
another.
yeah. The longest walk is possibly 3 minutes.
Yeah.
There's no problem then. So going back to sticking to social media side of things, because obviously it's such an important part of any level of promotion these days. You've got to get out there and ensure people see your name, hear about you, find ways to buy the tickets, and so on. It's also an incredibly frustrating aspect these days. How are you handling that side of things? Do you think you're using it to the best of your abilities?
I would always say there's more to be done.
Hmm.
It's very interesting the way that different generations use social media. So different groups of people and subsections will use different platforms. So it's trying to find what bits of social media work for what audiences and then use that to our advantage. And I wouldn't, I mean, I'd be remiss if I said that we were all over it because we're not, because it's just the two of us at the moment,
Yeah.
us an army of freelancers. So there's definitely more that we can be doing. And if you look at people like Vicky Hungerford and Adam Gregory and the Bloodstock family, they are so good at tuning into their audience and their community and using TikTok and Facebook Live and Instagram to their benefit. And that's something that I definitely want both Kai and I to start to do going forwards, because people don't necessarily know what goes on behind the scenes. And it would be great if we could be part of that trend to say, look, this is what takes to go on there. You've got people like Gav McNally and James Stewart from Two Promoters, One Pod. Gav does Damnation, James does ATG and 2000 Trees, and they are absolutely flying at the moment with what it takes for them to get their events over the line. And just to be able for us to share our tiny bit compared to, those beasts of festivals would be something that's very much something I want us to tick off before the event next year.
You have a strategy. You talk, obviously, you use references to, Damnation, Arctangent, Bloodstock as great inspirations. But of course, what works for them may not work for you, particularly when it comes from a time perspective. So, we've got to April 2025 next year. Do you have a sort of thought out strategy of how you want to approach this?
In my head, yes.
Mhm.
Need to make it happen. At the moment, we are the last week in September, so we're in the main touring season. So alongside the festival, we've got our promotions company. So we are probably a little bit distracted with some of the stuff that's going on there. But we do try and have a social media calendar. We try to make sure that there's posting going on at least once a week, if not more. That's on the main festival pages, but there's a lot around our personal brand that needs to happen before the event.
It is it's a difficult balancing act. Obviously, you know yourself, there's not just one social media platform either, and it all requires different things. So the best of luck to you on that, because goddamn, it is a frustrating world.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Thank you.
Very much. I'm not allowed in the comments.
Yeah, so
I'm banned.
Kai's banned.
Oh, wonderful. Okay, from a total fan perspective here, who from the lineup are you particularly excited to see?
Oh, that's a tough one. There's loads from my side. I'll let you go first.
Well, there's an obvious one, but I'll be stealing it from you, I expect. So I'll leave that one over to you. But wow, I mean, obviously I mentioned Elvana. I just think after the day that hopefully it will have been, they're the perfect icing on the cake for me. I think they're just such great fun, and it's really nice to end on a band that is just simply fun for fun's sake, rather than perhaps taking themselves seriously. Hasn't been met well with everyone. We've had a few how do you go from Sleep Token to Elvana, but I think perhaps they're not looking to go to festivals for the same reason I am, perhaps. I don't know, but I think that's going to be a spectacle. Hopefully we'll be getting the full light show and dancers and the whole thing. I think it's going to be a great way to sign out the festival. And outside of that, I'm really looking forward to seeing Kris Barras, actually. I think sadly, Stonebroken couldn't make the rescheduled lineup, and we were very, very lucky to get Kris Barras in as direct replacement. And I think they're absolutely killing it at the moment. I think it's going to be really good.
So we've got 3 bands announcing on Friday at 5 p.m. So that's Friday the 29th? I can't remember what date that is. I can't see without my glass on either. 29th.
27th?
Oh, 27th,
it's the
sorry.
25th today. It's according to the computer.
I've lost all concept of time and space after this week's touring. But there's a couple of bands that are announcing this weekend that I am super, super stoked about. I can't mention them, unfortunately. But for me, Kid Bookie, I've been watching his growth just go from like strength to strength, and he's definitely one that needs to be watched. We've got Tribe of Ghosts, who are a sort of local band to us from Brighton. They put on a phenomenal show and sort of flex quite a few genres, so they tick quite a lot of boxes for me. And then if I'm being really selfish, I love a Soothing Akira show. They are home slices, so they're from Portsmouth. It's a hometown show for them. They always bring the party. They have got a whole party vibe to them, a bit like Black Gold do when they perform. You always get the crowd hyped. Nobody has a bad time, and it's always a great show. So for me, they're my top ones, as well as Elvana, obviously.
Yeah, 3 phenomenal bands you mentioned there. Well aware of Kid Bookie's talents. Absolutely love Tribe of Ghosts, and as you said, Season Akira. It's always a great show. They're also special guest headliners for a show on November 3rd at the Portsmouth Guildhall, which is a Takedown showcase, the final. This is a sort of Battle of the Bands competition, right?
Yes, it is. Yeah. So one of the biggest things for me, and being from Portsmouth, is that I wanted to give back to the scene. So to give local bands a platform to be able to nab a slot at the festival. So this will be the final of that competition that was running up until about March, April this year, and then obviously postponed this year's event. But we've carried those artists over into next year, so they could win a slot to perform on the Friday, and then another act can win a slot to perform on the Saturday. So
opening main stage, I would add.
Yeah.
So they're not just going to get shoved out into a little side room.
Yeah, to be able to perform to a big crowd. So that is something that I'm particularly passionate about.
And that is November 3rd at the Guildhall. As 6 bands: Summoners, Adverted, Zilf, SOS, Wide Awake Club, and Fear. And of course, the special guest headliners, as we said already, Season Akira. So get some tickets to that show as well. It feels to me, speaking to you here, and I think it's been expressed enough, that it is so damn important to you both and to the festival and what you do around that, that given small and independent bands a chance like this, and just even playing the festival in general, is the most important thing for you.
Yeah, absolutely. You do this as a commercial enterprise, but also it's very much about making sure that there's a longevity to the scene, to the festival, that we are able to give these bands a place for them to perform and to be almost like an eye-opener to certain audience types. My ex-husband is coming along to the event. He likes a certain category of music, but because he's coming to the event, I know that he will then look at loads of other bands from different genres that he wouldn't normally listen to. For us to be able to have a philanthropic element to the event is very, very important to me. Got to give back to the community. We've got to make sure that there's headliners coming up through the ranks, and we've got to make sure that there's a scene for everybody, because this is in our DNA. We don't want it to disappear.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, giving as many bands as possible a platform is more important than ever, I think. It's always been important, but once upon a time we could, you could find a band that you like the look of, chuck a couple of local bands on with them, and chances are you'd have at least sort of 60, 70 people in a little room somewhere. That is getting harder and harder to do these days. Having a bigger platform like this as a taster, I like to think that people have got enough trust in us to know that if they're coming along, they can check out bands they've not heard of, and they'll go home with a few new favourite bands that day.
Well, where does your passion and drive come from? Because you've acknowledged yourself, it's an incredible amount of work and it can be an incredibly exhausting experience. Yes, there are so many rewards and you've listed so many examples of them, but ultimately your passion and drive will always take hits and no doubt it ebbs and flows. But where do you draw it from mostly?
Each other, I would say, probably feed off each other to a certain extent, that and our kids. So our youngest is very much a Grebo at heart and is constantly trying to get us to book bands that he likes, although he doesn't like to be seen with us at gigs because we're not cool anymore. But yeah, it's and listening to the community and to the scene, and like I said, we read all of the comments, we take on board people's suggestions for bands, and that helps buoy you up when you're having a particularly rubbish time. I'm not going to lie, when we postponed the event, it was probably the hardest thing we've ever done. There were tears from me, definitely, and it took us a good month to recover from that. But just knowing that we were able to potentially bring the event back and be able to give back again is sort of where we try and, that longevity, that making sure that there's a scene and making sure that we're giving back is definitely where I get it from. I don't know about you.
Yeah, no, I think that's important. I mean, I started this out many years ago in a different century, no doubt. The sort of partly to bolster my own band's fortunes at the time by supporting some bigger artists, but also just simply born of getting bands that I wanted to see to the area that I lived in. And I think there's still, there's definitely a massive element of that that's still happening, really. Without something like Takedown as a nucleus to kind of bringing these bands to the area, they may not even come, basically.
Yeah.
We've got Brighton on one side, you've got London to the north. Without somewhere to come and play, then we end up having to start traveling for shows again. So, we want to keep that scene alive.
It makes a lot of sense to me. I look at gig calendars, I look at like tour dates of bands, and Portsmouth isn't always regularly represented compared to obviously so many other cities in the country.
Yeah, it had a great scene in the 90s, and then we lost a couple of venues, and we still
Yeah.
got rooms, which is amazing. And we personally work with a venue called Moonshine, also in Portsmouth. But there is definitely work to be done in improving the scene. And when you speak to like Charlie and Kit from Seething Akira, they will tell you just how hard it has been for them to become an up and coming band. They've effectively had to leave the city to go and tour other markets to get that audience and then bring it back to the city with them and go, actually, hold on a minute, we're from Portsmouth. Let's bring these people along for the show. So there's work to be done there, but I'm positive that we can, the signs are there, basically, that it's on its way back.
I think from a festival point of view as well. I mean, in terms of rock festivals, you've got Burn It down in Torquay.
Yeah.
You've got then the next ones are going to be basically Reading and Slam Dunk South. So without Takedown doing its thing in this part of the world, I would say it's a long way to go for the next best event. So long may it last.
Yes, oh, absolutely. And hopefully that 2025 is a massive success. Because I guess aside from the obvious being a sellout festival, what else would success look like for you for the event next year?
Not necessarily a sellout. I mean, that would be lovely, but they're like they're like a unicorn.
A well-attended event then.
Yeah, exactly. A well-attended event that is fiscally in the black is great, but the fact that we would then be able to plan the following year's event and then get back on track. So when we initially partnered with Portsmouth Guildhall, we had a 5-year plan to grow the event, and so each year it would get bigger and bigger. We would grow the capacity, we would grow the number of stages, we would grow the offering to the customers. Obviously, that's taken a knock, and we're now back to square one. But for us to have the knowledge that that is something that's going to be back in play after next year's event is my North Star. That's what I'm aiming towards for sure.
Yeah, I think that's the most important thing, really. Have to have a well-received event that puts us back at least to the, even if it's just back to the start position, where we can then start planning where we go from there, really, and just bringing the best event we can.
The long term is still at the back of your mind. You are still focused on that.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's fantastic to hear. But of course, for now, we need to get to April 2025, specifically Friday the 4th and Saturday the 5th of April for Takedown Festival 2025, with an incredible lineup and stupidly cheap tickets at the early bird prices at the moment. So please, folks, do go pick them up. Thank you guys so much for taking the time to speak with me. I really appreciate it.
No, a pleasure. Lovely to meet you.
Cheers, Carl. It's good to be here.
Thank you very much for watching. If you'd like to see more content like this, please consider hitting the subscribe button. It is gratefully appreciated. You can find us over at gbhbl.com, our full website, where reviews, news, and so much more goes up daily. We're also on all social media platforms: Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Threads, at GBHBL. Just search for GBHBL and you will find us out there. We also have merchandise on sale. You can access the shop via the website.